High Commander Rand stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Flame. His scales were dark red, almost black, and they shined under the dim lights of the ship. He was tall, even for a Draconian, and his eyes burned with the fire of 1,000 conquered worlds. Behind him, through the massive viewing window, he could see his fleet. 400 warships stretched across the darkness of space like a river of death. Each ship was alive in its own way. Draconian vessels were grown, not built. They breathed. They healed. They hungered for battle just like their masters. "How long until we reach the human border?" Rand asked. His voice was deep and cold. 6 hours, High Commander," answered his navigation officer. "We will enter their space before the next cycle ends." Rand smiled. It was not a pleasant thing to see. His teeth were sharp and many, and when he smiled, he looked like a predator about to feed. The Draconian Empire had spent 30 years expanding across the galaxy. 17 star systems had fallen to their might. Some species had surrendered immediately. Others had fought and died screaming. It made no difference to the Draconians. The result was always the same. Now it was humanity's turn. The Galactic Council had warned the humans. They had sent messages telling them to prepare for death. They had given humanity 72 hours to make peace with whatever gods they believed in. The Council felt it was the kind thing to do. After all, no one had ever survived a Draconian subjugation fleet. Rand had read the reports on humans. They were soft creatures. No scales, no claws, no natural weapons of any kind. They had only been in space for 50 years. They were children compared to the ancient Draconian Empire. This would be easy, this would be fast, this would be boring. The hours passed slowly. Rand spent the time reviewing battle plans that he knew he would not need. 2 million Draconian warriors waited in the ships behind him. 2 million soldiers ready to burn human cities and enslave human populations. It was more than enough. It was probably too much. "High Commander," the communications officer called out, "we are crossing into human space now." Rand walked to the center of the bridge. "Send the standard message. Tell them to surrender or die." The officer nodded and transmitted the ultimatum. It was the same message they had sent to 17 other species. "Surrender your worlds, surrender your people, surrender your future. Resist, and we will erase you from existence." For several minutes there was only silence. Rand expected this. Lesser species often needed time to understand their situation. They needed time to accept that hope was dead. Then the response came. It was a single human voice. The translator made the words clear for everyone on the bridge to hear. "You are now in restricted space. This is your only warning. Turn back." Rand laughed. The sound echoed across the bridge. Other officers joined him, their hissing laughter filling the air. "Turn back," Rand repeated. "They tell the Draconian Empire to turn back." He shook his head in disbelief. "Find the source of that transmission. I want to know which human sent it so I can kill them personally." The communications officer worked his controls. His face changed. Confusion replaced amusement. "High Commander, I cannot find the source. The message came from somewhere near the outer planets, but there is no ship there, no station, nothing." "Then look harder," Rand growled. "Yes, High Commander." The fleet continued forward. The gas giants of the human system grew larger in the viewing window. Rand watched them with hungry eyes. Soon, those planets and their moons would belong to the Empire. Soon, everything here would belong to him. "High Commander," the voice of the sensor officer was strange, worried. "What is it?" "We have lost contact with the rear ships. 20 vessels are no longer responding." Rand turned. "What do you mean?" "They are simply gone, High Commander. No signals, no energy readings. They have vanished from our sensors." Before Rand could respond, the sensor officer spoke again. His voice was shaking now. 50 ships gone, 70, 100. Rand rushed to the sensor display. He watched as the symbols representing his ships disappeared one by one, not destroyed. There were no explosions, there was no debris. The ships simply stopped existing. "What is happening?" he roared. "What weapon is this?" No one could answer him. The fleet tried to scatter. Ships turned in all directions, trying to escape whatever invisible force was taking them. It made no difference. They vanished just as quickly. Heavy cruisers disappeared. Troop carriers disappeared. The mightiest warships in the Draconian Empire disappeared like candles blown out by wind. 2 hours passed, half the fleet was gone. Rand sent distress signals. He sent surrender offers. He begged the humans to stop. No response came. Only silence, deep and terrible, filled the communications channels. 4 hours passed. Only 50 ships remained. Rand watched his empire crumble around him. Warriors he had known for decades vanished without a sound. Ships he had commanded in a dozen battles faded into nothing. He could not understand it. He could not fight it. He could only watch. 6 hours after entering human space, the Eternal Flame was the last ship remaining. Rand stood alone on his bridge. His officers were gone. His crew was gone. The ship still lived, still breathed, but everyone inside had simply ceased to be. Only he remained, standing in the dim light, staring at the empty space where his fleet had been. Then he felt it. Something was watching him, something vast and old and hungry. He could not see it, but he knew it was there, all around him, filling the darkness between the stars. It was not a weapon. It was not a machine. It was something else entirely, something that had been waiting in human space for a very long time. Rand opened a channel. He did not know if anyone would hear. He did not care. He needed to speak. He needed someone to know. "They were waiting for us," he whispered. His voice was not angry or defiant anymore. It was the voice of a creature who had finally understood fear. "They have always been waiting." The lights on the bridge flickered and died. In the darkness, something moved. Rand screamed, but no one heard him. The Eternal Flame drifted silent and empty through the void, and the Draconian Third Subjugation Fleet passed into history as a mystery that would haunt the galaxy for generations. Far away on a small blue planet called Earth, Director received a notification on her computer. She read it once, nodded, and deleted it. The notification had contained only 3 words: "Collection complete, satisfied." She poured herself a cup of tea and looked out her window at the night sky. Somewhere up there, 400 ships and 2 million warriors had learned the oldest truth in the universe. Some spaces are not meant to be entered. Some darkness is not empty. And humanity had made peace with theirs a very long time ago. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The Draconian Third Subjugation Fleet was gone. 400 warships, 2 million warriors, vanished without a trace. At first, no one believed it. The Draconians were the most feared force in known space. They did not lose. They did not disappear. They conquered and killed and moved on to the next victim. That was the natural order of things. But the evidence was clear. The fleet had entered human space and never came out. Ambassador watched the emergency session of the Galactic Council from his seat in the Great Hall. Representatives from 100 species argued and shouted and demanded answers. The Draconian ambassador stood at the center, his scales flushed with rage, screaming accusations at anyone who would listen. "The humans have developed a weapon," he roared. "They must be forced to surrender it. They must be punished." Other voices disagreed. Some thought it was a trick. Some thought the Draconians were lying for unknown reasons. Some simply could not accept that such a powerful fleet could vanish so completely. Said nothing. He was of a species known for patience and careful thinking. His people had long, thin bodies covered in soft gray fur and large eyes that could see lies as easily as truth. He had served as a diplomat for 40 years, and he had learned one important lesson in that time. The most dangerous answers were often the simplest ones. 3 weeks after the disappearance, volunteered to enter human space. The Council accepted his offer with relief. No one else wanted to go. The Draconians certainly would not send another fleet. They had lost too much already. Traveled in a small diplomatic ship with a crew of 12. They crossed the border into human space with their weapons powered down and their surrender flags displayed. Did not know what had taken the Draconian fleet, but he did not intend to give it any reason to take him. For 3 days, nothing happened. They flew deeper into human territory, sending peaceful messages asking for contact. The silence was complete. Then on the 4th day, a human shuttle appeared beside them. It was small and unarmed. A single human pilot sat inside. "Ambassador," the pilot asked through the communication channel, "please follow me. Director is waiting for you." Ordered his crew to follow. They flew for several more hours until they reached a human space station orbiting a rocky moon. It was not impressive. It was not threatening. It looked like any other station had visited in his long career. He was escorted through plain corridors to a plain conference room. A human woman waited for him there. She had dark hair turning gray at the edges and eyes that seemed older than her face. "Ambassador," she said, standing to greet him. "I am Director, thank you for coming. Would you like some tea?" Accepted the tea more out of confusion than thirst. He had expected weapons. He had expected threats. He had not expected a small woman offering him a warm drink in a boring room. "Director," he began carefully, "the Galactic Council has sent me to investigate the disappearance of the Draconian fleet. 400 ships entered your space. None emerged. The galaxy demands an explanation." Nodded, she did not seem worried or guilty. She seemed tired, like someone who had answered the same question too many times. "We don't know what happened to the Draconian fleet," she said. Truth sense activated. He studied her carefully. She was not lying. Her words were honest. But there was something else there, something hidden beneath the surface. "Director, my people can sense deception. I know you believe what you are saying, but I also sense that you are not telling me everything." Smiled slightly. "You are very observant, Ambassador. Let me say it differently. Human space has certain properties. We have adapted to them over a very long time. Others have not." "Properties," repeated. "What kind of properties?" "The kind that are difficult to explain and impossible to control." This was not helpful. Tried a different approach. "The Draconians will not accept this answer. They will send more ships, more warriors. They will keep coming until they understand what happened." "They are welcome to try," said. Her voice was calm but sensed something beneath it. Not pride, not threat, something like sadness. "We would prefer they did not. We do not want conflict. We only want to be left alone." Returned to the council with his report, had told the truth. She had also told him nothing useful. The mystery remained. The Draconians did try. They sent probe after probe into human space. Unmanned vessels designed only to observe and report. Every single one vanished. They sent spy drones hidden in asteroids. Gone. They sent cloaked surveillance platforms using their most advanced technology. Gone. A young Draconian commander named Al grew frustrated with the failures. He was ambitious and brave and foolish in the way that young warriors often are. He took a single cruiser and crossed the border himself, determined to solve the mystery that had embarrassed his empire. His ship was found 3 days later drifting in neutral space just outside human territory. The vessel was undamaged. The crew was gone. Only Al remained. He was sitting in the captain's chair in complete darkness. Every light on the ship had been destroyed. When the rescue team found him, he did not move. He did not speak. He simply sat there, staring at nothing with eyes that no longer existed. He had clawed them out himself. The Draconian doctors examined him for weeks. His body was healthy. His mind was not. He refused to eat unless forced. He refused to sleep unless drugged. He refused to speak about what he had witnessed in human space. But sometimes, late at night, the guards would hear him whispering. Always the same words, repeated over and over like a prayer. "It sees everything. It remembers everything. It is always hungry." The guards reported these words to their commanders. The commanders reported them to the Emperor. The Emperor ordered the reports destroyed and the guards silenced. But the words spread anyway. Rumors traveled through the Draconian military like disease. Something lived in human space, something old, something terrible, something that even the mightiest empire could not fight. Heard the rumors too. He began his own investigation, searching through human records, human history, human culture. He was looking for answers. What he found instead were questions. Questions that would lead him to a truth the galaxy was not ready to hear. Questions about a deal made in darkness, thousands of years ago, by a species too stubborn to die. But that is a story for another time. For now, the galaxy watched and waited. The Draconians licked their wounds and planned revenge they would never take. And somewhere in the depths of human space, something ancient and patient continued its eternal watch. It had protected humanity for 12,000 years. It would protect them for 12,000 more. And God help anyone foolish enough to test it again. Was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was a scientist, a researcher, a collector of forgotten knowledge. His species, though, were small and fragile creatures with 6 eyes and minds built for pattern recognition. They saw connections where others saw chaos. They found meaning where others found nothing. For 30 years, had studied the history of extinct civilizations. He had walked through the ruins of species that had died before his own people learned to use fire. He knew more about death than almost anyone in the galaxy. That was why the Galactic Council came to him. "We need you to study the humans," the council representative told him. "We need to understand how they destroyed the Draconian fleet." Accepted the assignment. He was curious. Humanity was young. They had only been in space for 50 years. They had no weapons capable of destroying 400 warships. Yet the fleet was gone. Something did not add up. He began with the obvious questions. What technology did humans possess? What military forces did they command? What allies might have helped them? The answers were disappointing. Human technology was average. Their military was small. They had no allies. So changed his approach. He stopped looking at what humanity was and started looking at what humanity had been. Human history was strange. Their Earth was over 4 billion years old. Most spacefaring species came from younger worlds, planets that were only 1 or 2 billion years old. Earth had been spinning through the universe for twice as long as many civilizations had existed. And humans themselves were strange. They were soft, weak, slow. They had no natural weapons. They could not see in the dark. They could not run fast or climb well or swim deep. By all logic, they should have been prey animals, food for stronger creatures. Yet they had survived. They had not just survived. They had conquered their entire planet. They had killed off species far more dangerous than themselves. They had risen to dominance against all odds. How? Dug deeper, he accessed human cultural archives. He read their myths and legends. He studied their religions and folklore. What he found made his 6 eyes blink in confusion. Every human culture, throughout all of their history, had stories about monsters. Not just predators, not just dangerous animals, monsters, creatures that nature, things that lived in darkness and fed on fear. Beings with too many eyes, too many teeth, too many angles, dragons, demons, gods of death and shadow. Every culture, every time period, every corner of their small world. At first thought this was normal. Many species had myths about dangerous creatures. It was a natural result of evolution. Fear kept animals alive. But human monster stories were different. They were too specific, too consistent, too detailed. And then notice something that changed everything. Approximately 12,000 years ago, human stories about monsters changed. Before that time, the stories were warnings. Stay away from the dark places. Do not anger the spirits. Fear the things that hunt in the night. After that time, the stories became memories. We fought the darkness. We survived the long night. We made the old ones sleep. Something had happened 12,000 years ago. Something important enough to change the entire pattern of human mythology. Something that turned warnings into victories. Searched for more evidence. He found cave paintings from that era. They showed humans standing in circles around fires, facing outward into the darkness. In that darkness, shapes moved. Shapes that hurt his eyes to look at, even in simple paint on ancient stone. He found burial sites from that era. Mass graves containing thousands of human bodies. They had not been killed by weapons or disease. They had simply died, all at once, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. He found artifacts from that era, stone totems carved with symbols that matched no human language. When translated them using ancient linguistic algorithms, the words made no sense, but they made his blood run cold. "We give you our fear, we give you our dead. In return, you give us the darkness. The compact is sealed." A compact, a deal, an agreement between humanity and something else. Sat in his laboratory, surrounded by screens full of evidence. His 6 eyes moved rapidly as his mind connected the patterns. He understood now. He finally understood. 12,000 years ago, something had come to Earth. Something from the void between galaxies. Something ancient and hungry and utterly alien. It had come to feed on humanity, to consume them like it had consumed countless species before. But humanity had not run. They could not run. They were trapped on their small planet with nowhere to go, so they did the only thing they could do. They fought back. They could not kill the thing. It was beyond death, beyond physical harm, but somehow, through methods lost to history, they had bound it. They had made a deal with it. They had given it something it wanted in exchange for protection. The thing in the darkness became humanity's guardian, not by choice, but by contract. It could not leave Earth's region of space, but nothing that entered with hostile intent would ever leave either. The Draconian fleet had not been destroyed. It had been collected, taken, claimed by something that had been waiting for 12,000 years. Began writing his report. His hands shook as he worked. This knowledge was dangerous. This knowledge changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. He never finished the report. On the third night of his writing, felt something watching him. He looked up from his screens and saw only darkness. The lights in his laboratory had gone out. All of them, every single one. "Hello," he called. His voice echoed in the empty room. Something moved in the darkness. He could not see it, but he could feel it. Vast, ancient, curious. A voice spoke directly into his mind. It was not sound. It was something older than sound, something that bypassed his ears and went straight to his soul. "You have found the truth, little seeker. Few ever do. We are impressed." Tried to respond, but his mouth would not work. His body was frozen. "Do not fear," the voice continued. "We mean you no harm. You are not in human space. You are not our concern, but the truth you have found. It is not yours to share." The screens around went dark. His research disappeared. 30 years of work gone in an instant. "You will sleep now," the voice said. "When you wake, you will remember nothing. This is mercy. This is kindness. The truth you found is not a burden meant for your species to carry." Wanted to argue. He wanted to fight. But a strange peace was flowing through him, warm and heavy, pulling him down into darkness. "Why," he managed to whisper, "why protect them?" The voice paused. When it spoke again, there was something almost like affection in its ancient tone. "Because they were the first to look into the void and refuse to blink. Because they made us feel something we had forgotten we could feel. Because a deal is a deal, little seeker, and we always keep our promises." Slept. When his assistants found him the next morning, he was dead. His face was peaceful. His 6 eyes were closed. There was no sign of violence, no evidence of foul play. The official report listed natural causes. But the walls of his laboratory were covered in writing. The same phrase, repeated thousands of times, written in sewn hand. "They made a deal, they made a deal, they made a deal." The laboratory was sealed. The writing was destroyed. The incident was classified. But somewhere in the archives of the Galactic Council, a single file remained. His final note, saved automatically before his research was erased. It contained only one sentence. "Humanity is not protected by weapons. Humanity is protected by something that makes weapons unnecessary." The file was never opened. The truth remained buried. And in human space, the darkness continued its eternal watch, patient and hungry and forever bound by an ancient promise. The Draconian Emperor had ruled for 200 years. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed rebellions. He had watched his enemies burn and his empire grow. In all that time, he had never felt fear. Until now. He stood on the observation deck of his personal vessel, staring at the neutral space where he had agreed to meet the human representative. His scales were the color of dried blood, and his eyes burned with barely controlled rage. 400 ships, 2 million warriors, his finest fleet, his greatest commanders, his most loyal soldiers, gone. "The human shuttle is approaching, Emperor," his advisor said quietly. "I see it." The shuttle was small, laughably small. It could not carry weapons powerful enough to scratch his ship's armor. It could not carry soldiers enough to threaten his guards. Yet the Emperor watched it approach with the same caution he would give a poisonous insect. "She comes alone," the advisor added. "No weapons, no escort, just one human female." The Emperor said nothing. He had read the reports. He had seen what happened to Commander Al. He knew that the humans did not need weapons or escorts. They had something else, something worse. Director was escorted to the meeting chamber by 20 armed guards. She walked between them calmly, her hands visible, her expression peaceful. She looked like someone taking a pleasant stroll, not someone facing the most powerful ruler in the known galaxy. The Emperor studied her as she entered. She was old for a human, her hair gray, her face lined with age. She wore simple clothes, nothing that suggested power or importance. She could have been anyone. She could have been no one. That made her more dangerous, not less. "You are Director," the Emperor said. His voice filled the chamber like thunder. "I am," she bowed slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Emperor." "I did not agree to this meeting for pleasantries, human. I agreed because I want answers. 400 ships entered your space. Where are they?" Met his burning eyes without flinching. Your people are not dead, Emperor. The Emperor leaned forward. Explain. They are simply elsewhere. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I can give that is both true and useful. His voice remained calm. But if you wish to understand fully, I can tell you a story. It is a long story and an old one. It is the story of my species and how we came to be what we are. The Emperor wanted to refuse. He wanted to demand clear answers, direct information, something he could understand and fight against. But curiosity won over pride. He nodded once. Begans. 12,000 years ago, my ancestors lived in caves and hunted with spears. We were weak. We were slow. We should have been food for the predators that shared our world. But we survived because we had one gift no other species possessed. We could imagine things that did not exist. We could fear things we had never seen. We could prepare for dangers that had not yet arrived. She paused, her eyes growing distant. That gift saved us when the visitor came. The visitor. We have many names for it. The darkness, the hunger, the thing between stars. It came from the void beyond our galaxy. It was old when our sun was young. It fed on sapient minds, on consciousness, on the fear and despair of thinking beings. It had consumed entire civilizations across the universe. When it found Earth, it expected another easy meal. The Emperor listened. His rage was fatting, replaced by something colder. My ancestors could not fight it with spears, continued. They could not run from it. They could not hide from it. It was everywhere. It was in the darkness of every cave, the shadow of every tree, the space between every thought. It began to feed, and my people began to die. Then how did you survive? Smiled, but there was no joy in it. We did something no other species had ever done. We refused to be afraid. The Emperor made a sound of disbelief. That is impossible. Fear is a biological response. It cannot be controlled. You are correct. Fear cannot be controlled, but it can be directed. My ancestors gathered together around their fires and made a choice. They would not waste their fear on the visitor. They would not give it the meal it wanted. Instead, they would use their fear as a weapon. How? They challenged it. They stood before the darkness and said, "Take us if you can, kill us if you must, but we will not bow, we will not surrender. We will fight you with every breath until there are none of us left. And even then our ghosts will curse your name forever." His voice grew softer, almost reverent. The visitor had never encountered anything like it. Species always ran or begged or broke. Humanity did none of those things. We were too stubborn, too stupid, too proud. We did not understand that we were supposed to lose. And that was enough to stop it. No, we could not stop it. Nothing can stop it, but we confused it. We interested it. For the first time in countless ages, the visitor felt something other than hunger. It felt curious. The Emperor was silent now, his anger forgotten. So it made us an offer, said. A deal. A compact that would bind both sides forever. It would not destroy humanity. Instead, it would protect us. It would guard our space against any threat, any enemy, any invasion. Nothing that entered our territory with hostile intent would ever leave. And in return, we give it what it wants. Fear, suffering, the screams of those foolish enough to attack us. Your fleet, Emperor, is not dead. Your warriors are not dead. They are alive, all of them, preserved perfectly in a darkness that thinks, a void that feels, a hunger that never ends. They will live forever. They will suffer forever. And the visitor will feed on their despair for eternity. The Emperor's scales had turned pale. His claws gripped the arms of his throne so tightly that the metal bent. You are telling me, he said slowly, that something from beyond the galaxy protects your species, something that cannot be killed, something that feeds on souls. Yes. And you made a deal with it, willingly. Our ancestors did. We have honored that deal for 12,000 years. We did not ask for this arrangement. We do not control it. We simply live alongside it and remember the lessons it taught us. What lessons? Look directly into the Emperor's eyes. That the darkness is not empty, that the void between stars has teeth, that some deals once made cannot be broken. The Emperor sat in silence for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet. What do you want from me? Nothing, said. We want nothing from you or your empire. We only want to be left alone. Keep your fleets out of our space. Keep your ambitions away from our borders. Live your lives and conquer your worlds and build your empire, but do it far from us. And if we refuse, if we send more ships? Then the visitor will collect more souls. It is always hungry, Emperor. Your fleet was the largest meal it has received in centuries. It would welcome another. The Emperor closed his eyes. For the first time in 200 years, he felt small, he felt mortal, he felt afraid. We will withdraw, he said finally. The Draconian Empire will not trouble human space again. Bode, that is wise, Emperor. I am sorry for your losses, truly. We take no pleasure in what happened. We are simply bound by forces older than your empire, older than our species, older than the stars themselves. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Emperor. The visitor asked me to give you a message. A message? It said, thank you for the offering. It was delicious. Director walked out of the chamber, leaving the most powerful ruler in the galaxy sitting alone in the darkness, contemplating the true nature of the universe. And somewhere in human space, something ancient and patient smiled with a mouth that had no form, pleased with its latest collection, already hungry for the next fool who would test its domain. 5 years passed after the meeting between Director and the Draconian Emperor. 5 years of quiet, 5 years of peace, 5 years of fear spreading silently through the galaxy like poison in water. The Draconian Empire did not attack human space again. They did not send probes or spies or scouts. They their borders 20 light-years away from human territory and declared the surrounding region a forbidden zone. Any Draconian who entered the zone without permission would be executed. No exceptions, no appeals. The Emperor never spoke publicly about what he had learned. He did not need to. His silence told the story better than words ever could. The mightiest empire in the galaxy was afraid of humanity. That was enough to change everything. Other species watched and wondered. The aggressive ones reconsidered their expansion plans. The curious ones began researching human history. The wise ones simply stayed away. Ambassador of the return to human space 3 years after his first visit. He had been thinking about his conversation with Director about the incomplete truths she had shared. Now he wanted more answers, not for the Council, for himself. He found humanity unchanged. They still lived their ordinary lives on their ordinary worlds. They still traded peacefully with their neighbors. They still seemed like the same soft, weak species they had always been. But notice things he had missed before. Human children did not fear the dark. They ran and played in shadows that would have terrified young. Human adults slept soundly in rooms with no lights, comfortable in blackness that other species found suffocating. They had no word for the specific terror of darkness that existed in almost every other language. Because for humans, the darkness was not their enemy. It was their oldest ally. Met with Director again in the same boring conference room, drinking the same warm tea. She looked older now, more tired, but her eyes were still sharp, still knowing. You came back, she said. It was not a question. I needed to understand something. Ask. Chose his words carefully. Your species made a deal with something ancient and terrible, something that feeds on fear and suffering. How do you live with that knowledge? How do you sleep at night knowing what lurks in your space? Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. Do you know what my ancestors called the visitor ambassador? They called it the guardian, not the monster, not the horror, the guardian. But it feeds on suffering. It collects souls. It keeps your enemies alive forever in eternal torment. Yes, and it keeps our children safe. It keeps our worlds protected. It keeps us alive in a universe full of species that would happily destroy us. Set down her tea and looked at directly. The universe is not kind, ambassador. It is not fair. It is not safe. Every species that has ever existed has had to make hard choices to survive. We made ours 12,000 years ago, and we stand by it. The visitor may be terrible, but it is our terror, our darkness, our guardian in the void. Understood. He did not agree, but he understood. What happens when the deal ends? He asked. Smiled sadly. It never ends, ambassador. That is the nature of the compact. Our ancestors bound themselves and all their descendants forever. We cannot break the deal even if we wanted to. We are tied to the visitor until the last human dies and the last star burns out. Does that not frighten you? Sometimes, late at night when the universe feels too big and too old and too cold. But then I remember what we gained. 12,000 years of survival, 12,000 years of growth, 12,000 years of children being born and living and dying in peace. That is worth any price, ambassador, any price at all. Left human space the next day, he never returned. On Earth, in a facility hidden beneath ancient mountains, Director made her monthly visit to the chamber. It had no official name. It did not appear on any map. Only a handful of humans even knew it existed. The chamber was a cave, expanded over the centuries but still recognizably the same place where the first compact had been made. The walls were covered in paintings 12,000 years old, faded but still visible. Humans standing around fires, darkness pressing in from all sides, shapes in that darkness that hurt to look at. At the center of the chamber was nothing. Literally nothing. A space where light did not reach, where sound did not carry, where reality itself seemed to pause. It was not a hole, it was not a void, it was something else entirely. Something that should not exist but did. Stood before the nothing and spoke in a language older than any human civilization. The words had been passed down from mother to daughter, from father to son, for 400 generations. They were not taught in schools. They were not written in books. They existed only in the memories of those chosen to remember. "Guardian," she said, "I come with gratitude and tribute." The nothing rippled. Something vast and ancient turned its attention toward her. "Daughter of the compact." The voice was not sound. It was pressure in her mind, meaning without words. "You are aging. Your time grows short." "Yes, my successor is chosen. She will continue the tradition." "Good, the compact must be honored. It has always been honored." Nodded, "The Draconian collection, are they well?" The question might have seemed strange to anyone else, but had been raised to understand the visitor. It did not simply kill, it preserved, it kept. It treasured its collections like a child treasures toys. "They are eternal," the visitor said. "They scream beautifully, their fear is delicious, their despair is nourishing, we are satisfied. And if others come, if other fleets try to enter our space, then we will collect them as well. We are patient, we are hungry, we are always waiting." Bowed her head. "Thank you, Guardian, for protecting us, for honoring the compact." The nothing rippled again, and for a moment felt something that might have been affection flowing from the ancient darkness. "Thank you, children of Earth, for refusing to break, for refusing to bow, for showing us that even the smallest flame can hold back the endless night. You gave us purpose, you gave us partnership, you gave us something we had never had before." "What is that?" "A reason to care whether anything survives." The connection faded. The nothing became still. Stood alone in the chamber, surrounded by paintings of her ancestors, feeling the weight of 12,000 years pressing down on her shoulders. She walked out of the facility and into the sunlight. Above her, the sky was blue and clear and beautiful. Children played in nearby parks. Adults went about their daily lives. No one feared the darkness. No one feared the void. No one feared the future. That was the gift the compact had given them. Not just protection. Peace. The peace of knowing that whatever threats emerged, whatever enemies arose, whatever horrors the universe produced, humanity would survive. Because they had a guardian in the shadows, a monster that loved them, a darkness that called them family. In the deepest void of space, far beyond the reach of any star, the visitor watched over its territory. 400 Draconian ships drifted in eternal darkness, their crews frozen in endless torment, their screams echoing through dimensions that normal beings could not perceive. And the visitor was content. It had wandered the universe for billions of years. It had consumed countless civilizations. It had been as a god and feared as a demon, but it had never found a species quite like humanity. A species that had looked into the face of oblivion and said, "No." A species that had turned their greatest predator into their greatest protector. A species that had made the darkness itself their ally. The visitor would honor the compact forever, not because it was forced to, not because it was bound by ancient promises, but because, after countless ages of loneliness, it had finally found something worth protecting. And somewhere in the archives of the Galactic Council, a single file remained sealed and classified. It contained the only known recording of the first compact, translated from languages that no longer existed. The words were simple, they were ancient, they were the foundation of everything that humanity had become. In our darkest hour, we made the darkness ours. In our moment of death, we chose to live, and the void that came to consume us became the wall that protects us. This is the compact. This is the promise. This is the truth that all humans carry in their blood and their bones and their souls. We are never alone in the dark. The dark is our home. The file had never been opened, but the truth it contained echoed through the galaxy anyway, carried in the whispers of species who had learned to fear the soft, weak humans who were not soft or weak at all. They were simply the only species in the universe who had made peace with their monsters. And their monsters loved them for it,